Me anything about politics. This is the show where you can ask anything about politics that you like, and there will be no roasting, judgments, or debate. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can be like trying to learn a new language, and I know that politics is particularly weird these days with all the misinformation and propaganda that is out there running rampant. So, this is the place where you can ask all your questions and we can help figure out what's really going on. How are we supposed to solve all these problems if we can't even agree with what the problems are and what is happening and what the jobs numbers are, etc. So, if you got questions, just put them in the chat. Everyone is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. This is not a show for fighting. This is not a show for roasting. This is not a show for debating. Nobody's going to get owned on this show here today. It is just good faith answers to all good faith questions. Maybe you're a MAGA person and you've always wanted to ask a real life Democrat a question without it devolving into a shouting match. Then this is the show for you. Maybe you've always had a question that you wanted to ask about politics, but you were worried it would make you sound like a MAGA person or a libtard person. There's no judgments here whatsoever. So if you are a Democrat who has a question about MAGA shit, or if you're a Republican who has a question about democratic socialist shit, you can ask those questions here, and nobody is going to roast you or get into a fight with you. It is just good faith answers to all of your questions. Yeah, D. Scott, that is a real fucking bummer. That is 100% accurate. And yeah, I had no idea that they had a son who was struggling with addiction issues. Yeah, it's real fucking sad, especially because like he's one of the most just like universally loved human beings. Like everybody that worked with him was like, yeah, great human being, super nice. Yeah, it's a bummer. But anyways, Muzz King, good to see you again. And good to see you as well, D. Scott. So yeah, any questions about politics, just put them in the chat and we will get to answering them. There's no such thing as a dumb question. I don't make fun of people for not knowing things or trying to learn new things. It's just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. Everyone is welcome here, Republican, Democrat, everything in between, and everything on the outskirts. Juan Pablo says, what are your honest thoughts on Trump? I'm always honest, Juan, so you never have to put that qualifier in there. But yeah, Trump is I probably like one of the worst human beings to have ever lived. He is by far the worst president we've ever had. He is a horrific combination of incompetent, corrupt, and authoritarian. So yeah, there you go, Juan Pablo. X Vander says left wing ideology has failed in the last 20 years as it does not have an end goal for all people. Xander, where has left wing ideology failed over the last 20 years? Because America, and I would also argue potentially the world, has been suffering under right wing ideology for the last 20 years. So if you could clear that up for me, I would love to hear your explanation there. Mimi says we've lost the ability to listen and try to understand partisan politics. Why? There are people out there with a lot of money and power who are incentivized to get us to fight amongst ourselves. Lyle Stanley says, "Do you think Kirk's wife is a grifter?" I saw somebody on one of the social media platforms recently say that they've had periods that lasted longer than Charlie Kirk's wife mourned his passing, and yeah, I don't know. I think that yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about her. I don't think you marry someone like Charlie Kirk unless you are also somebody who is fine with lying for power and fame. Bill Clinton says, "Do you like Bill Clinton?" He's fine as a president. He was okay. As a human being, he's clearly got some weird shit around sex. Seems to be associated with the fellow at the island, and tons of affairs and stuff like that. So yeah, not a great person, but a pretty good president. Juan Pablo says, "Who would be a good 2028 presidential candidate?" I mean, Democrats got a deep bench. There's polling around AOC. A bunch of people who I like a lot have sort of like suggested that they might be throwing their hat in the ring, like Chris Murphy or JB Pritzker or Gavin Newsom. Like we got a deep bench. Andy Bashir. What's his name? Cohen in Pennsylvania. Josh Cohen, Pennsylvania. Joan of Snark says Clinton balanced the budget. So that is accurate, Joan. If we want to be perfectly like fair, we should also mention that there was like a once in a generation technological boon that happened during the Clinton administration and didn't end until he was out of office. So it is true. It is true that Clinton balanced the budget, but he had help, from the invention and proliferation of the internet. Coda says opinion on Chrissy Dome. She sucks. She's the worst. Didn't she kill her dog or something? Yeah, goddamn. Yeah, she's just one of the many people in the Trump administration who I find to be, you know, uh, incompetent, unqualified, lacking any kind of moral foundation. Steve Conjemi says, I like that cost of living is down, gas, grocery, etc. That's a plus. I don't think that that's true though, Stephen. Pretty sure that cost of living is continuing to go up. Z Garda says, Jared, what's going on? Good to see you as well, Z Garda today. Okay, Scott, hello to you as well. Scott123 says, name the 8 wars that Trump ended. I can't because they don't exist. Okay, Scott says early today. Yes, that is true, Scott. Steven says overall life is easier to manage now. It is. That is wildly inaccurate, Steven. Maybe you are a rich person and that is the reason why your life is easier now. Maybe you are a white person and that is the reason why your life is easier right now. But most Americans are suffering right now. They are all struggling with an inflated cost of living. Healthcare costs are about to skyrocket. Electric costs are going up like exponentially. Hospitals are closing in rural areas because they can't afford it anymore. Like, it's just, yeah, Stephen, I would encourage you to open up your aperture a little bit. Like, maybe get your news from different sources because boy, oh boy, are things not easier for a majority of Americans right now. Scott says Rob Reiner's son a Republican. I don't know. It seems like he had some addiction issues. Let's see here. It's One Louder says, don't buy electric, get rid of Obamacare. No, Obamacare was keeping everybody's healthcare costs down, and it was making it so that insurance companies couldn't discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act. Okay, good morning to you as well, DJ. Did you see my message that I sent you on the Discord? Zeke Gardaday says, did you know there were mass record sales during Black Friday this year, but less items than last? Yeah, I think the data on that is that things were more expensive, so a higher dollar amount of goods was purchased, but fewer people were buying and fewer goods were purchased. Okay, Steven says, I'm going by how I live life compared to 4 years ago. It's way better now. That's all I'm saying. I find that really hard to believe, Steven, just because of how uniformly costs have increased for Americans. I mean, are you worried at all about your healthcare costs going up, Steven? Yes, Seaguard, that is accurate. Shiny Fly Trust says, I'm alive because of the Affordable Care Act subsidies. I'm really glad to hear that. Jan Sky Sixer says, Bill Clinton benefited from Al Gore inventing the internet. Also, is this where the Al Gore rhythm came? So, Jan, you have accidentally hit one of my pet peeves, which is, because I was alive during the 90s, like, I remember exactly what happened when Al Gore went out there and said that he was responsible for funding the program that made it so that the internet could be invented, and then everybody fucking lost their mind and said Al Gore just said he invented the internet, and it was a joke on every single fucking late night show for months and months and months, and it was the most unfair attack on a human being that has existed. George W. Bush wins that election, is way less intelligent and competent, and we can't really, and the election was so close, we can't really discount anything. This idea that permeated that he was somehow trying to take credit for inventing the internet when he actually did deserve credit for funding the invention of the internet. that should have been a political boon for him. But instead, it got turned into this joke about how he said he invented it, which he didn't. Oh, I hope that you have a good day today as well, Enrique. Mini Dro says, do you think a revolution will ever come, or is the U.S. stuck in forever capitalism? I don't know about the revolution. Is where any sort of like violent uprisings are concerned. Number one, you're never sure if it's going to succeed, and number two, you don't know what's going to rise from the ashes. And so, in lieu of chaos that may or may not result in a better world for everybody, I'm going to go for let's vote for politicians who will help us regulate capitalism so that there aren't billionaires flying around on private jets having lobster and caviar 3 meals a day while other people are struggling to pay rent and their electric bills. Hyde Hiahid says, thoughts on a civil war in the USA? I don't think it's going to happen, and I really hope that it does not happen. Scott says, will we ever see accountability under the E-files? Potentially. But nothing is a given, unfortunately. What we need is to continue doing the things that we do as citizens to get accountability, striking, protesting, boycotting, political pressure, voting, etc. New Sarah Dome says, what do you think about Ron Paul? I respect Ron Paul for at least having the courage of his convictions. There are a lot of people in the MAGA Trump Republican universe that just bend the knee and do whatever Trump wants them to do. Ron Paul is somebody. Oh wait, we're talking about Ron Paul, not Rand Paul. Ron Paul's his dad. Well, my argument against Ron Paul is the same as it is Rand Paul, which is if you're a libertarian, you are being tricked by the billionaire class. And so Ron Paul, Rand Paul, they are both tools of the billionaire class. If you want me to go into more specifics on that, I happily will. D. Scott says, I liked Ron better than Rand. I mean, he was fine. He was a silly old man. Maxis Stradux says, do you think I can join the army if I have conspiracy to commit treason on my record? I actually don't know anything about that, and that's just quite a what do you call it? That's quite an indictment, Max. Food Bear says, what's your opinion on AIPAC and its lobbying influence? My opinion about AIPAC is the same as my opinion on every lobbying organization like Heritage and Federalist, which is that it should not be that how much money you have means how much power you have in the government. So I think that we need more regulation around lobbying, and that includes AIPAC as well. And I also don't like AIPAC as an organization because I think that they are working, hand in hand with the Netanyahu government, and the Netanyahu government is atrocious. It is extremely right-wing. It's guilty of war crimes and genocide. Let's see here. Kaj Vaneen says, opinion on cooperativism. I'm unfamiliar with that phrase. If it means what I think it means, it sounds pretty good. Mini Dro says, do you think Trump will get impeached in 2026? How realistic is this? If Democrats get a majority in the House, it is 100% happening. If Democrats do not win the majority in the House, it is 100% not happening. Miguel of the Sky People says, what are your thoughts on Dan Crenshaw's booming net worth? I guess I would say that, Republicans control all of the government right now, and so it's totally weird that they haven't made insider trading illegal yet for people in the government. I thought that they had the real problem with Nancy Pelosi insider trading, and yet they just can't seem to pass a bill, on that shit. Seems pretty weird to me. Anonymous says, sure, Republicans control the government. They do. I see you and your anti-Semitism, so guess what? You're out of here. See you later. Okay, Bautista Lorenzo says, usually you're on around 1 p.m. my time. What's up? I've got jury duty this week, so my schedule is going to be much more up in the air. I am doing an early stream today. Maybe I'm going to find out what my schedule is for tomorrow when I go to the courthouse today. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled. Schedules are regularly updated on my website, my TikTok calendar, my Twitch calendar, on my Discord channel, on my bulletin board. So yeah, join one of them, Bautista, and you can get the 411. Minidro says, opinions on Palantir and these weird tech oligarchs taking control of the U.S. It is terrifying. I mean, we have a government right now that is willing to do whatever a corporation that pays them a lot of money to do. You know, so if Palantir said we wish to hunt poor people for sport, and here is $1 billion for your presidential library, then Trump will go, okay, yeah, sure, absolutely, that sounds great to me. So at exactly the time when technology is reaching a peak where we're going to have to start worrying about massive job losses for AI and mechanization, we're going to have to worry about government surveillance and corporate surveillance impeding every random inch and crevice of our right to privacy. At this exact moment, we have a government that is willing to sell every single American for fucking pennies on the dollar. Like, yeah, worst case scenario, you know. New Dome says, as an Italian, hey, buona notte, New Dome. I'm half Italian, so welcome to the party. All right. I think the Electoral College is just made so that the same two parties always win. Is that true? No, the Electoral College is really a mechanism by which the Republican Party stays in power. It has little to do with the two-party system. And, you know, I don't love the two-party system, but it's definitely, not responsible for every ill with our electoral systems. Okay, John Abbott says if Teal wanted to hunt poor people for sport, it'd cost him way less than $1 billion. Yeah, 100%. Trump would do it just for first spot in line. Okay, Carlitos Way says big tech, big money on the E list. Only reason they are hiding it, agree or disagree. I don't think it's the only reason, but I'm sure that a bunch of them are on there as well. America First says, why did Obama and Hillary fabricate the Russia collusion? It has not been proven. America First. I just want to let you know, America First, that I know what you're doing here, and if you continue to do that, then I will block you. But if you are willing to engage in good faith, then you are allowed to stay. Yes, I have looked into it, America First, and it is not true at all. Batista says, why are civilians having to do jury duty? Isn't this what our government is supposed to be doing? No, I mean, the entire point of jury duty is that citizens do it. So, you know. Okay, Zero says, opinions on the government of Germany during the years of 1933 to 1945. I'm against it, obviously. Nocera says, good to hear. It's just that in Italy we have like 8 parties to straight and seeing just 2 parties. What's up, H8? Thank you for respecting my wishes. JR says, whose coke was in the White House? I have no idea. Okay, let's see here. All right, scrolling down. America First says, why are Democrats highly treasonous these days and lost all credibility? Congratulations, that was your last straw, so you're out of here. Also, I fucked your mom. Okay, Cervello says, would you consider Barack a hero or a traitor? Barack Obama? I mean, hero seems a little hyperbolic. He was a very good president, and I think that he was good for America as the first black president. He walked on ice for 8 years and never slipped. He did a lot of good for the American people. Not perfect, obviously, but I felt a lot more comfortable with him in charge than, Trump. Absolutely. Let's see here. D. Scott says, that's an unfortunate name considering the podcast I am listening to. Cervello. Cervello? I don't know what that means. What's up, Lauren? Good to see you again. Carlitos Way says, would you be interested in a document from USDA showing drained SNAP contingency prior to the shutdown? I don't know who you are, Carlitos, so I don't know if I'm going to accept a document from you. But if it's, I give it to reporting. Give it to reporters, man. D. Scott says I was referring to America First. Oh, so you're listening to Ultra. Copy that, my guy. Copy that. Sir Velo says, so the Smith-Mund Act was beneficial and worthy of passing. I am unfamiliar with what that act was, Sir Velo. I'm guessing that you were the one who asked about Barack Obama. User a whole bunch of numbers says, Obama still took bribes from big ag and big chemicals. Obama did not take bribes. That has never been proven. There is no data or evidence to suggest that. Let's see here. Ronald Schaefer says FDR was the last good president we had. I disagree with that. Let's see here. Mr. Bo Peanut says, show blocked. I don't know what that means. Spring Rose says, why are people fearful of socialism? Seems like a taboo subject to many. So the reason why people are fearful of socialism and communism is because of a bunch of reasons. Like there are countries that are authoritarianism, like Russia and Venezuela, who call themselves left-wing governments, socialist and communist, but actually are not. And so Americans were sort of like brainwashed during the entire Red Scare and through the 80s to think that anything communism or socialism means dictatorship and it's bad. There's a different definition, though, for those philosophies. And people on the left, like myself, who believe that there is some good there, they use those definitions that don't involve authoritarianism and dictatorship. So yeah, I think that we need to start being really clear when we are talking about things so that people can't just assume that we mean the worst version of whatever word they are responding to. Not Owenson, when has it not meant dictatorship? I'll give you a bunch of examples, not Owen. So paved roads is socialism. We have that in America. We do not have dictatorship. The military is an example of socialism. We have it here in America. It is not a dictatorship. Employee-owned companies are an example of communism. We have that in America. America is not a dictatorship. There you go. H8 says, Jarrett, what's your favorite donut? Maple glazed old fashioned. Xander says, well, fundamentally, communism has been abducted by dictatorship, and we must call that out as leftist. I disagree with that. I don't believe that an authoritarian government can be also labeled leftist. They are diametrically opposed. They are mutually exclusive. So there you go. Not Owen says, I mean, sure, if you define the government doing anything as socialism, that is how I define not Owen. That's what we call universal healthcare, socialized medicine. And that is what people that call themselves democratic socialists mean by socialism, not Owen. So, let's see here. NC4 Lundun says socialism only works when everyone is on board. That is not true because paved roads, public schools, and the military all are working here in America. Nick Adem says, do you think banks should be public or private? Oh, that's a really good question. I am not so dogmatically pro social policies that I think that the private industry can't exist. Like, I think that all of these philosophies can work together, a little communism, a little socialism, a little capitalism. And so I think that there's room for a government-run, savings unions or whatever to compete with the private industry. I don't think that there's any issue with that at all. And thank you, Dan Blackwood and Musking, for helping me meet my first gift goal of the day. Okay, let's see here. Not Owen says, sure, then I figure anyone is a socialist makes it a very useless term. Well, there's a difference, though, not Owen. So if you were somebody who believed that the fire department should not be paid for by tax dollars, but instead everybody should sort of like decide to purchase a fire protection program, then you would be more of a capitalist than you are a socialist. And there are people in this country right now who that's the way that they believe. They're some version of libertarian or far right-wing Republican that believes that we need to get rid of all taxes because, quote unquote, all taxation is theft. And that means there's not going to be any money for paved roads or public schools or the military, etc. And so, yeah, there are some people who believe that if you want goods and services in America, you have to pay for them out of your own pockets. Everything should be privatized. That is kind of like the libertarian ideal. Let's see here. Not Owen says, those are like weird libertarians. The far right is very much in favor of government spending. Again, not Owen. We're talking about two different things here. Like there's the ideological version, and then there's like sort of like the version of what they actually do, right? So the Republican Party will say that they are the party of small government, but then they do a whole bunch of big government shit, like sending the military into American cities and regulating what kind of medical care women are allowed to get. So yeah, I think that you will start to see a Republican push for getting rid of things like libraries and public schools. We're already seeing that. The Trump administration is trying to dismantle, the Department of Education. It's not that far gone to think that this is the end result that the Republican Party wants. Okay, not Owen says exactly. I think if you define socialism as government doing stuff, it's reductive at most. I disagree. Not Owen. I disagree. When you have a political party, aka the Republican Party, that is actively trying to dismantle the government so that billionaires can rule us like wealthy oligarchs, then I think it's really important that we discuss what the alternative philosophy is. And if we call that democratic socialism or being a progressive Democrat, it really doesn't matter. But that is what we're talking about. Riker says, when will Trump be held accountable? He will be held accountable when enough people do the work of holding him accountable. That means people like you and me, Riker. People that do strikes and boycotts and protests and put political pressure on companies and politicians and get out there and vote and organize and talk to people about politics. There will be accountability. He might die first, but if we do the work, there will be accountability. Xander says libertarianism is the extreme of capitalism and anarchism is the extreme of communism. I don't know if I'd necessarily agree with that, but I hear your point. All right, over to the Twitch and YouTube. Average Joe, great to see you again. Says, have you had an opportunity to check out any of the new Texas districts since SCOTUS ruled that the racially gerrymandered mid-cycle districts are totally constitutional? I haven't. I don't really get into the crosstabs of redistricting. I do know that there are some people who believe that they have gerrymandered too hard and that they may actually lose seats because of it. So maybe the Supreme Court, did not do them a favor exactly by allowing those to stay. Okay, let's see here. Big Daddy says, accountable for what? Bringing 28 trillion into our country. Stop in all these people that are steal. So Big Daddy, Trump did not bring $28 trillion into the country. Yeah, and stopping all these people that are stealing, I don't know what to be. Donald Trump is literally stealing money from all of our pockets, putting it directly into his. So if you would like to engage on that, if you would like more specifics on that, I'm happy to deliver, Big Daddy. Just let me know. All right, welcome everybody to the live stream. This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. Everyone is welcome here, Republican, Democrat, everything in between, and everything on the outskirts. Bautista says, I feel like Democrats and Republicans are like the Sith and the Jedi, both pushing for different ideas. Generally, I would say, but I wouldn't say that Democrats are the Sith, obviously. Yeah, there's substantive differences between those two, Okay, user Fred says all politicians are corrupted. That is inaccurate. Use a bunch of numbers, and when you paint politicians in a broad brush like that, you are only doing helps and favors for the worst ones. Okay, let's see. Okay, not Owen says mercantilist kings with armies were not socialists, lol. No, they weren't, because the kings were not elected. That's the difference between socialism and monarchies. Okay, Xander says, I don't know how you Americans have not hated both parties for not even having a healthcare system. Xander, a lot of people hate both parties. I think the hate that we lobby towards the Democratic Party is unfair and unjust. And that is part of like my, general thesis statement on these live streams, is that people have an inaccurate view of what the parties are, that they think the Democratic Party is worse than it actually is and the Republican Party is better than it actually is. And that's because Democrats never get any credit and Republicans never get any blame. We judge Democrats by way too high of a standard, and we judge Republicans by way too low of a standard. And so part of the reason why I do these live streams is trying to correct those narratives and talk to people about how we can all work towards having a better country together through activism and voting and shit like that. Okay, Healing with Ari says citizen here and don't like either party. I mean, you should like the Democratic Party a little bit, I would say. James Scott says I'm a centrist. Probably more left-leaning Democrats need to wake up. Need a wake-up call, or else we get more Trump. in quotation marks. I don't necessarily agree with that, James Scott. Tobin says, thoughts on neo libertarian. I don't know what that is. Eggs Mayhem says, I thought your last name was Birdstein. Is that a Mandela effects joke? Mimi says, why do some Republicans want to ban women's rights, voting, banking, healthcare? Well, some Republicans on the extreme side of the political spectrum, they want sort of like straight white men to reach that kind of like elevated status that we've had in the past. And so, women will be dependent on us for their freedom, and so they will have to marry us and have sex with us. And it's kind of bananas. It is it's kind of related to incel culture, where it's like this is a group of people who don't want to be virgins, but they are, because they believe that there's this world of like chads out there that get all the girls. And so you have these like far right people being like, if women didn't have any rights, then every woman would need to get married in order to get out of their parents' house, and that would just make there'd be a lot more women available, and somebody would just give you one of their daughters to marry, and then you get to have sex. Doesn't that sound really nice? And then then they kind of like fall into that misogynistic ideology. But yeah, all this stuff is really complicated, of course. Okay, let's see here. Junior says, what do you think about U.S. giving Israel $300 billion? It's against the law. We have a law on the books right now. I believe it's called the Leahy Law, that says that we are not allowed to give money or weapons to governments that are guilty of war crimes and genocide. And the Netanyahu government is guilty of war crimes and genocide. All right, and thank you, Kasha and D. Scott, for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Chris says, Rush Limbaugh to Charlie Kirk, conservative outrage over policy led to Trump, and how do we fix it? That is a really good question, Chris, and it's a huge question. So it's like there's a million things that we got to do to fix that. There's no easy fix. It's going to be a massive project. Starting off, I think we need to do the work of talking to people. Like, part of the reason why conservative outrage over policy exists is because we have this loneliness epidemic where people are just like looking for connections anywhere, and they see this really easy community to join of extremely online right-wing extremists, and they're being told that their problems are all being caused by others, whether it's immigrants or women or the LGBTQ community. They're lying to them and saying, how it's impossible for you to get a job that pays you enough to be able to afford a house and be able to afford vacations and starting a family. That's because of immigrants and trans kids. It's not because of billionaires who control everything. It's because of immigrants and trans kids and women also. They're to blame too. So yeah, we need to do that work of rescuing those people from those right-wing spheres. We need to make America less of a dystopian late-stage capitalist nightmare, so that people don't get desperate enough to look for those kind of like simple answers that scapegoat marginalized communities, stuff like that. Okay, but again, there's like that's a 1,000-page book. How do we move away from the Rush Limbaughs of the world? Real Benda says, politics aside, who's hotter, Christy Dome or Tulsi Gabbard? Pass. Hard pass on that question. Xander says, right-wing people are just more funny than leftists because most leftists are just too serious. I completely disagree with that. I have never met a funny conservative. Zach says, what's your opinion on... Already did that one. Riker says, women didn't used to have any till they spoke up. If they wanted to, they could rule America. I mean, they do want to, and I think that they should. Okay, Sacred Mischief says, Berenstein Bears or Berenstein Bears? I have to know because of your last name. LOL. Sorry, my question isn't good. No, it's fine, Sacred Mischief. Let's see here. Atlas says, how old are you? I'm 46. Let's see here. Xander says, I would disagree. The most liked politicians in U.S. history is FDR, JFK, and Lincoln, 2 out of 3 Dems. I mean, Lincoln was technically a Democrat by modern definition, Xander. Alrighty, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Adrian says Avengers Doomsday trailer leak. Ooh, that's exciting. Morris says 46 with all that hair. I take Propecia. Okay, Sacred Mischief says equality caused the economy to be bad, not billionaires hoarding everything. LOL. Yeah, 100% Sacred Mischief. Okay, Moore says 2026 question mark. Let's all do the work to win 2026, guys. Okay, back over to YouTube and Twitch. John Abbott says the idea of socialism is several hundred years old and has evolved and branched in that time. Insisting on using a single definition from the beginning of existence is incredibly non-serious. I agree with that, John Abbott. Average Joe says the reason I asked about the Texas redistricting is because one of the new districts will have the current Representative Mark Vesey against the current Rep Julie Johnson and former Senate candidates Colin Allred. The fourth candidate, Zishan Hafiz, is the only one pledging to not take PAC money. Just wanted to raise awareness. Oh, that's interesting, Average Joe. Yeah, given, all things being equal, I would definitely take a candidate who didn't take PAC money over one that did. But I also think that it's not disqualifying for a Democrat to take PAC money if they are in a race with a Republican that takes PAC money. John Abbott says the funniest thing about conservatives is how every few years the script switches between leftists aren't funny and all comedians are leftists. It's boring. Oh, yeah, that is interesting, John. Let's see here. Zach says, do you agree that there is a lack of pay and motivation in the workforce? Yeah, but I'm curious what you mean by that, because a lack of pay suggests that you believe that companies need to be paying more in money and benefits. But a lack of motivation maybe suggests that you're making the nobody wants to work anymore argument. So what do you mean by that? Motivation there, Alrighty, Zach. Okay, slow question day today, but that is totally fine. It's early in the morning still. We got about 23 minutes left in the live stream today before I got to go do jury duty. So yeah, let's get to some questions, everybody. Let's see what we got here. D. Scott says it's lunchtime here. All right. Okay. Let's go ahead and decline that one. All right. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. My name is Jarrett. Everybody is welcome here. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts, I am happy to engage in good faith on any political questions that you may or may not have. McCandles Happy Paw says, what is the unemployment rate? McCandles, I'm not 100% sure. I believe the Trump administration is blocking that information from being released. I believe that they're hiding a lot of the economic data because it makes Trump look bad. So yeah, I couldn't tell you. McCandles Happy Paws, I do not know. Alrighty, let's see here. Let's go through some of the news since we are waiting for questions today. Okay. Okay. Cool. Mimi says remigration in Project 2025. I've heard this remigration term, and I'm not 100% sure what it means. I think isn't that like, turning America more white, Mimi? Isn't that what that is? But yeah, Project 2025. It is the Republicans' plan to turn America into a right-wing dictatorship, where there is no accountability for them. They're able to do whatever crimes they want. Women will no longer have rights. Marginalized communities will no longer be protected by the government. The administrative state will just be dismantled, and in its place, we will just have billionaires ruling over us like lords and kings, where they get to sit in their ivory towers and private jets and mega mansions, while we're all fucking drinking the chemical runoff from their factories and getting cancer. Okay, and thank you, Sacred Mischief and TikTok Watcher, for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. Unzonked says leftist talking points. Do you have a question, Unzonked? Okay, Lauren says, what's your opinion on Rob Reiner, his Trump Putin talk, and Trump's tweet? I didn't know that Rob Reiner had anything to do with Donald Trump. I didn't know that he had a doc or anything about Russia and Putin. That's all news to me. I've only known him for his comedy work, but yeah, it's just a real fucking bummer that his it seems like his kid has been suffering with like some mental health and addiction issues, and seems like that. I didn't see what Trump tweeted out about that, but I'm sure it was appropriate sarcasm. Riker says, and dumbing down more Americans so much that they vote for their own destruction. Says Riker. What was the first part of that comment, Riker? Yeah, I don't see the first part, Riker. What are you talking about? Okay, Kimberlina, on early, no jury duty. Yes, no, I do have jury duty. I'm not reporting to the courthouse until 12:30, which I think is interesting. I've had jury duty a bunch of times, and I have never been called at such a late time. Lauren says, do you think someone was in his crazy son's ear? I mean, it's a little conspiracy theory coded, Lauren, but I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying I'm going to wait for evidence before I start making claims like that. Unzonk says, we've deconstructed America on leftist talking points, and it's only made the ruling class stronger. I don't think that that's accurate at all. Unzonked, would you like to discuss some specifics? Documentary is called The Spy and the Asset. Oh yeah, I'll definitely check that out. That sounds interesting. Dan Blackroyd, the GOAT, back in the chat. You can't trust Bureau of Labor Statistics data unless we hear from a whistleblower. That is accurate. Scott Clara says, are they paying for your lunch? I don't think so. Not unless you get put in a jury, I don't think. I've never had to like actually sit on a jury. Knock on wood here. Okay. Yeah, Unzonk's still waiting for that engagement, my guy. Still waiting for something to chat about. So the government in North Carolina just dissolved a library board because they refused to censor a book about a trans kid. So that's a fucking bummer. Okay, let's see here. Ilhan Omar's son was targeted by ICE. That's a real fucking bummer. Don't love that. All right, Spring Rose says, do you think Republicans have genuine Christian values, or do they just use it to gain more followers? I think some do. I think that there are some people in the base who I think have legitimate Christian values. I think there are some people in the base who have what they believe are Christian values, but they've just sort of like been tricked into this like money-washed version of Christianity. I think that there are some real Christian right-wing politicians, but I think that the majority of elected Republicans are Christian for show and political value. Okay, user bunch of number says, do you think the Bondi gunmen who got beat to death by civilians should be charged with murder? That's a pretty confusing question, user. So did the Bondi gunmen get beaten to death? If so, I don't really understand what the value of charging with murder is. I don't know what happened to that guy. Carmine says, don't forget to tell them your research on the moon landing on your spare time. Just say you're Jehovah's Witness and jury duty is forbidden. By Dan Blackroyd. Yeah, I'm not trying to get out of it, guys. I want to get rejected but on the merits, because that way you don't get called for jury duty for like another 5 years or some shit like that. Spaniard, number 53, says, did you see the comments Trump made about Rob Reiner and his wife being murdered by their son? I haven't, but it is disgusting. I'm confident that it is. Okay, Unsonk says, would you agree the ruling class is stronger in 2025 and fundamentally engage with cultural leftism? Unzonked, I think that's an open question. Yes, the ruling class is stronger in 2025. No, I do not believe that they are engaging with cultural leftism. They do it when it is politically beneficial, but now that Trump is in office, all of them are lining up behind him. So they are not, a tool of the left. They are a tool of whatever gets them more clicks and money and power and less oversight. Let's talk about it, Unzonked. Let's get into it. Spring Rose says, I'm not Christian though, but I grew up forced to go to church and Jesus seems more socialist to me. He 100% is. Dan Blackwood says, say you work for Page Six and your first priority is the scoop, not the court system. Unzonked says, can't. Can't what, Unzonked? Because I loved your question, Unzonked. Like, let's get into it, Okay. Kimberlina got picked for jury duty last year and said it was kind of fun. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I don't want to get put on a jury, but I do want to get excused from a jury, and then I won't be called for another 5 years. Unzonk says no time to engage properly. All right, well, we're in sort of a weird time right now with my current live streaming schedule unzonked. So I can't tell you exactly when I'm going to be on next because, again, I have jury duty this week, and then there's Christmas, so things are weird. But I would love for you to come back, or even just send me a DM, or email me through my website, or join my Discord server. Like, this is what I'm here for. I'm here to engage with people, even those who disagree with me on politics. I'm trying to make sure that everybody's on the same planet, where, there are people out there who are like, costs have come down, and I'm like, I don't know what newspaper you're reading because costs have not come down. I got other people saying this has never been a better time to be living in America, and I'm like, that's a bananas thing to say because look at all these people that are suffering because of it. You got people telling me we have been living under Democratic rule for the last 20 years, and I'm like, that is blatantly untrue. So maybe if I come on here and I talk to people regularly, maybe we can all start to figure out like what's the actual reality and what's not actual reality. Unzonked. So yeah, in lieu of me being able to tell you exactly when I'm going to be live streaming again, send me a DM, join my bulletin board, join my Discord. Like fucking be a regular, my guy. Okay, good to see you, Spring Rose. Thank you for being here. Dan Blackrose says, I grew up religious, then I started first grade and learned snakes don't talk. That's pretty funny. Charlie says, do you think Republicans are deluded? Charlie, that's a really good question. Here's how I break down the Republican base. I think that there are some people in the Republican base who are rich assholes who vote for Republicans because Republicans make them more money, and they don't give a shit about people that get hurt. I think that some people in the Republican base are racist, and I think that they're racist, and so they like the fact that the Republican Party hurts marginalized communities, and so they don't give a shit that they're getting hurt by this. They just want brown people and women to be hurt more. There's another base that is, they have been taught from a very young age that the only way to be a good person is to be an American Christian. And the only way to be a good American Christian is to vote Republican. And so they do that. There are other people who are stuck in a media bubble that is not giving them any contrary information besides the fact that Democrats are bad and Republicans are good. So yeah, I think that some of them are deluded. I think that some of them I think some of them are shitty people. But yeah, I don't think that Republicans by and large are more or less gullible than other voters. Okay, Jacob A says Democrats are bad. No, they're not. Jan Sixer says, did you enjoy being Biden's economic advisor? I was not Biden's economic advisor. Jan, what the hell does that mean? Okay, Dan Blackwood says, cost of cakes that read congratulations on your promotion have definitely gone down. Yeah, but sale of cakes that read sorry you got laid off have skyrocketed. Charlie says, I think Biden destroyed the Democratic image. That's a little hyperbolic, Charlie. Why did one specific Democratic president destroy the Democratic image? Like, that seems unfair, Like, why are we picking one person to say that that's what all Democrats are? Jan Sixer says Jared Bernstein was the economic advisor for Biden? That's funny. Charlie says because he achieved nothing while in office. Charlie, that is blatantly untrue, Charlie. Would you like me to tell you some of the things that Biden achieved while he was in office? Because it was very impressive, especially considering they only had 4 years, especially considering they only had a majority in Congress for 2 years. Especially considering they had hostile members of their majority, like Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. Okay, Carmine says, how do we know it's a jury summons and not a complaint regarding parental obligations? I don't really know what that. I kind of see where you're going with that, Carmine, but it's a little over my head. Okay, Charlie, let's get into it. So the Biden administration capped the cost of insulin and asthma inhalers. They walked the picket lines with the unions. They successfully negotiated paid sick days for the rail workers union. They ushered in the largest investment in green renewable technology in our nation's history, which was revitalizing small towns with safe, clean energy jobs that were well paying. Let's see here, lower healthcare costs, lowered premiums, lowered medication costs for seniors. The NLRB was siding with the unions for the first time in decades. Lena Khan was breaking up monopolies for the first time in decades. The CHIPS Act was bringing technological manufacturing back to America. The PACT Act was filling holes in veterans' health care. The first bipartisan infrastructure bill in over a decade, the first bipartisan gun control legislation in over 2 decades. The Trump inflation that peaked at 9% was brought back down to 2.4% by the Biden administration. So, another kudos there. I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff because, again, it was a great administration. They did a really, really good job. Okay, Weiler says, why haven't any of the deep state criminals been arrested yet? I don't even know which deep state criminals you're referring to, Weiler. I think I know what you're saying. I think you're being sarcastic. Like, if the deep state is a thing, then why hasn't, blank blank happen? Then yeah, I did the Infrastructure Act already. Charlie says, do you think the UK national health system is a better alternative to our system? Yes, Charlie. Are you going to acknowledge the things that I said? Do you acquiesce that the Biden administration did accomplish some things, a lot of good things? Ruby's Colorful World says, did you see what Donald Trump wrote about Brett Reiner? He is so insensitive, no empathy. Yeah, I mean, he's a piece of shit. There's no qualifying it. He is a massive piece of shit. Charlie says, I think the Biden administration did a great job. All right, thank you. I appreciate you saying that, which is weird because you said earlier that he achieved nothing while in office. Okay, let's see here. Dan Blackwood says, by the way, the current chairman of Council of Economic Advisement is on indefinite leave. That is concerning. Oy, 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 oy. Oh boy, oh boy. John Abbott says, Mr. Attorney, I'm a comedian. My job is to be better at words than you. Do you really want me in this room during deliberations? That's very kind, John Abbott. Thank you so much. Average Joe says, since a small L liberal democracy means having free and fair elections with equal representation, has the word liberal in it. Is it possible that's why Republicans keep shifting towards fascism, even subconsciously? I think it's a little bit of a stretch, Average Joe, but I take your point. There is a smearing of certain political ideologies on the left that make it so that Republican politicians and pundits can weaponize those words against their base so that they can get voters to vote against their own interests. I think that might be a little bit of a stretch, though. Charlie says, who can be president after Donald Trump? Anybody, Charlie. Paul Carr, saxophonist, says, why do Democrats nitpick each other so much? Paul, I think some of that is organic, but I think a lot of it is inorganic. I think that the billionaire class has recognized that in order to undo regulations and taxes so that they can be as rich as richer than their wildest dreams, so that the next 10 generations of their children will be unspeakably wealthy. They have recognized that they need to stoke infighting within the Democratic Party, divide and conquer. That's fucking, what is that? Isn't that Art of War, right? I think that some of the nitpicking has to do with the fact that the Democratic Party is a rainbow coalition, and it's difficult to coalesce around a single platform because you've got a lot of different groups to make happy. You've got the African American caucus and the LGBTQIA caucus and the Latin American caucus and the Asian American caucus and the Jewish American caucus and the women caucus. It's like, it's hard, if we can, not shoot ourselves in the foot and not buy what the billionaire class is trying to sell us about our enemies being in our own political party, then we can make that diversity our strength. But it takes work. And unfortunately, we have allowed the billionaire class to do this for a long time because they were doing this insidiously in the shadows. But now that we know that they're doing it, maybe we can be a little bit smarter about that. Dan Blackwood says, maybe if we call them conservative arts degrees, Trump will stop canceling Pell Grants. That's very funny. All right, excellent questions today, everybody. Get in your final questions. Thank you for being here at this very special and unique time. TL says it's not hard, it's impossible. It's not impossible. We've done it in the past. TL, yeah. Whatever a person can do, another person can undo, and vice versa. So yeah, it's not impossible. It's not impossible if we all work together. TL. Ooh, ready. We have a weird schedule this week because of my potential jury duty. I'll have a little bit more information on that after today. But I will do my best to keep you guys abreast. Keep your eyes on my schedules on TikTok, Twitch, and on my website and on my Discord. All of that stuff will be updated regularly. Swag Liam says we should switch to nuclear energy. I don't have any problem with nuclear energy so long as it is a stopgap until we get to full, clean, renewable solar, wind, geothermal, hydroelectric, et cetera, et cetera. Fong Sauce, great to see you again. So yeah, I'll try to let you guys know when I'll be streaming again. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know that we're all struggling. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. I have a store that you can buy things from, and you can send gifts and become super fans and subscribers on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube. If you have Amazon Prime, there is a way that you can support the show financially that is completely free to you. If you subscribe to my Twitch channel using your Amazon Prime account, I get $2. It costs you exactly zero. So I would appreciate if y'all would do that, but obviously you don't have to. I appreciate any support that you guys give me, whether it is the free kind or the paid kind. But special shout out to my Twitch subscribers, Triska, Lauren, and Kayslow. Special shout out to my TikTok super fans, Susie, Sean, Dean, and Hot Sauce. And special shout out to my patrons, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. Get in touch, guys. Send me an email, shoot me a DM whenever you like. Don't be shy about it. I want to be a resource for you all to be more informed and involved in politics. And so if there's a question I can answer, if there is a nonprofit organization that I can direct you to for your volunteering or donation dollars, I want to be able to do that. So shoot me an email, shoot me a DM, join the Discord, use me and abuse me, use me until you use me up. The Discord is one of my favorite resources right now because in addition to being a way to get in touch with me, it is also a great way to form community with other people who like the show. And there are recommendations on there for books and podcasts and great organizations that you should 100% donate your time and money to. And let's see here. Lastly, just I hope and pray that you all do the work, because that is the only way that we get out of this. Not Grandma Chuddy says, how do you stay informed? Or how do you start being informed? Not Grandma. Which one are you asking? How you start is, take it slow. Maybe start with a daily news roundup podcast. They usually around, you can get ones that are 5 minutes or 20 minutes or something. Stay informed. I try to get my news from a bunch of different sources to avoid bias. I use news aggregator sites like Ground News and the Reddit news feed. And I just avoid right-wing media because right-wing media has been proven time and time again to be the least accurate news that is out there, even less accurate than people that do not read the news at all. Average Joe says, during my congressional internship, I had a caller responding to a postcard the rep sent out with her policies. The caller's first question was, is she a Democrat? After confirming, she went on an absurd, hateful rant. What can we, as individuals, do to separate personal identity from political ideology on a large scale? That is the project, Average Joe. And so people like me and you need to make it clear to the world that Democrats are not evil, because the billionaire class and the Republican Party have been on this smear campaign since the fucking 80s. And it has been very effective. It is really fucking burrowed into people's noodles because billionaires paid for it to be put there. We just got to do the work, man. I don't think there's an easy solution to that. We just have to do the work. B Rad sees the fraud in Minnesota. There's a white guy that ran that fraud ring, and there's no Democrats that had anything to do with that, B-Rat. So I don't really understand what pill you think we need to swallow, because somebody broke the law and now they're being held accountable. It wasn't Somali immigrants. It wasn't Tim Walz. It was just a dude who broke the law. Like, I don't really understand. I don't really understand what you're asking here, man. Okay, Chase says, "Where do you stand? I'm a progressive Democrat." Jonathan Swift says, where do you think World War III will start? I gotta tell you, Jonathan, it's bumming me out thinking about it, because I was so confident that we wouldn't, and I'm just a little less confident these days. And so, yeah, I would say it's probably going to be around Russia, but who the fuck knows? That's exactly the kind of prediction that I do not feel comfortable making. B. Ryan says, "I think that sums up all I need to know about you." Okay, well, you don't have to be here, my guy. Chase says, "Democrats are evil. Obama deported more people than Trump, and the Clintons are in the files." It's weird that you are focusing on Democrats, Shay, because all the things that you mentioned as far as like being evil, the Republicans are doing like way, way worse than Democrats are. Chase says, "Personally, I'm a communist. I think Democrats and Republicans are both right wing and shitty, to be honest." Che, I would happily get into this with you in more detail. Shoot me a follow, come back sometime. I'm right about to wrap things up because I got to go, I got to go do jury duty. But yeah, I do not agree with you. I think the Democratic Party is way better than the Republican Party. I don't know if America is ready for, a fully communist politician, and I think that we kind of need to live in the political reality that we're living in. But we can get into more details on a different live stream. I don't know when that's going to be because I have jury duty this week. But stick around, join my bulletin board, join the Discord. All those links are in my bio. And hopefully I'll see you on here again, Jay. All right, take care, everybody. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. I will see you at some point in the future. Not sure when. And same bat channel at the very least. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.